Clubhouse.
Welcome to Book Club Meets Movie Night, where you can join the club and see the show. This is Caroline.
And this is Mike. Tonight we're discussing Andrea Mara's 2021 novel, All Her Fault, as well as its very recent TV adaptation on the Peacock streaming service, starring Sarah Snook, Dakota Fanning, and Abby Elliott.
Just a reminder, on this revised podcast format, starting this episode and going forward, we're going to be discussing all in one episode. So we're going to do the book and the movie or the TV adaptation all in one episode so that we can just kind of pour our brains out. I feel like we have to do that.
Yeah, it was a little too much splitting back and forth and being like, wait till we get to the TV show or the movie discussion. And
it's too hard to hold back.
Yeah, and it's not probably conducive to a whole conversation as much as we like putting out extra content. So for All Her Fault, you can get this book in printed format, ebook format, which is how I read it, or via audiobook available at websites like Audible, which is how I believe Caroline read it.
I did on this one. So we've assumed that you've read the book or at least you don't mind spoilers. If you haven't seen the TV show or the book and you don't want spoilers, please turn this off right now and go watch or read and then come on back. Otherwise, we're plowing forward and getting into our book discussion.
Marissa Irvine arrives at 14 Tudor Grove expecting to pick up her young son Milo from his first playdate with a boy at his new school. But the woman who answers the door isn't a mother she recognizes. She isn't the nanny. She doesn't have Milo. And so begins every parent's worst nightmare. As news of the disappearance filters through the quiet Dublin suburb and an unexpected suspect is named, whispers start to spread about the women most closely connected to the shocking event, because only one of them may have taken Milo, but they could all be blamed. In a community full of secrets, who is really at fault? Dum, bum, bum.
Okay, Mike, so what are your general thoughts on this book? Does it scratch the itch of like mystery thriller that we were hoping for?
It did, though it ended up not being a mystery thriller in what I thought it was going to be. I mean, Milo, again, spoilers, Milo is back for a full 1/3 of the book. You know, most of the twist and mystery and really kind of edgier seat suspense, it really comes after he's returned, because it leaves you with so many questions of what actually happened here. Before then, it's all questions. No one knows what happened. No one really understands how he even got back safely. Not really. So right. It's really those last 150 pages of the book that really scratches at it. And when I read it, I finished the book before you did. And I said to you, you know, the last 20 pages were basically just, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. And then you finished it yesterday. And I think the first words you said to me were, damn. Shit, that was nuts. So I think we both kind of had very similar reactions in the end.
For sure. So it did scratch the itch for me for a thriller. I mean, I agree with you that it already had the hook of the kidnapping, and then so much more. There were so many more secrets and so many more twists and turns. So yes, it gets my seal of approval for mystery, thriller, all the fun that you get out of those books. So let's get into that like very important initial hook, the kidnapping. So while among a parent's worst fear, the kidnapping is really secondary to these adult relationships playing out. There's a lot of stress on working moms. There's friendships between the women. There's these husbands that are all about weaponized incompetence, and just huge questions about parenting and the choices we make, like who we leave our children with, what do we really know about them? So many things. So for me, that hook of the kidnapping, weirdly, and this is a strange part about me, I feel like I have the most tender heart ever, you guys. Like, I am somebody who's going to cry over like a puppy picture or whatever. And yet, as much as I love children and as much as kidnapping is the scariest thing I could think of, I wasn't actually overly scared at the beginning. I don't know why. I can't figure it out. I was really just sort of listening to a story. Like, I was very much listening to an event that happened to somebody, but I wasn't putting myself into their shoes and I wasn't feeling the emotions of my main characters. What do you think about all of that? And did you put yourself into the story?
I did. I maybe I'm a sapper sucker, but one thing I liked about this book was that there was no preamble. There was no ramp up. You were boom into it. Page 2, she was collapsing in Esther's doorway. And I felt that, my kid is supposed to be here. Where is my kid? Why isn't my kid here? Got to me right away. I assume animals won't get hurt in movies, and I assume babies and little kids won't get hurt in movies and TV shows. So I don't think I was really scared that something was going to happen to Milo. I didn't think we were going to find his body floating in a river. From the parent side of it, though, the where is my child definitely got to me.
I was worried, and I was kind of warned by other moms, like, oh, you might have nightmares, or you might be like, like freaking out thinking about it later and that type of thing. Like, did you feel like that?
No. The book for me was more like a jump scare. Like, my adrenaline shot right away, but then evened out because once you get into a plan, once there is rational thinking and you kind of collect yourself, then you kind of start getting into the checklist of what do we have to do? What are the next steps? And so I'm able to, I think anyway, at least reading it, I was like, yeah, this is what you want to do. You need to focus on the task. If you're focused on the task, then you're not being debilitated by the fear of it. Again, and I think maybe like you, I didn't think Milo was going to wind up dead somewhere. But
I didn't.
If it's a sick and twisted book, there are worse things than death, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Especially with children. And so if they killed the kid, like that's just, I would be more angry at the book than at the situation. I think, like I said, there are more sick and twisted things you can do with a missing kid than just kill
Well, for sure. Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about just jumping right into the book club questions, which you can find at the end of ebooks. You can look at the end of your paperback book or your hardbound. This one starts off with all her fault is told through several different voices and perspectives. How did this structure affect your reading of the novel? Was there a particular character you identified with?
I mean, I think I identified with Jenny and Marissa because I'm a working parent who has traditionally shouldered a lot of the child responsibilities in my kid's life. That whole plot line resonated a lot with me and the stressors of that. For me, this story in this book was much more about the adult relationships. It was much more about the stress and obligations and work life and how you're supposed to do it all. That all resonated with me more than the Milo kidnapping story. Does that make sense?
Well, sure. Hopefully you have not experienced a kidnapping, so that makes complete sense. I thought the structure of the novel was very similar to a lot of other book club books that I read, very similar to go back in between different characters and get their point of views. I always like that because I feel like I want to dabble in all the characters' worlds, in their brains. I want to find out what their motivations are. I want to understand their thinking, including someone like Irene, which was a character who didn't show up until way late in the show, but shows up much earlier in the book. And she provided a whole lot of insight and context about Carrie that I think we needed. I don't think there was a particular character I identified with. I mean, obviously, as a mom, I'm going to find some amount of qualities within all the moms. I think overall, the structure worked for me. And I think that the characters, it was important to hear the different voices, which we did lose in the show. And I do think that it did change how the information was revealed to us and sort of the pacing and everything.
I think, I definitely agree with that. I think the shift in perspective and point of views in the TV show completely repackaged the story. It really, I really think the TV show was a wholly different creature from the book, even though it followed the same overall larger beats. But on the book, though, I feel like while I'm certainly not at the income level of these people, my kid went to a private school, had a very small community. I understood and I knew a lot of these characters. So I was very immersed in this. This all felt very real to me. And I think the shifting perspectives actually helped immerse you even more because you weren't just getting Marissa or Jenny. You were getting all of what they were thinking. And I think Irene, as kind of hard a creature as she is, in a lot of ways, or at least a bad mom in a lot of ways, and a bad wife to Frank, who seemed like a very nice man.
He did seem like a nice man.
And very patient man. She is a necessary person because those people exist. Those parents exist. Those spouses exist. Even Richie and Peter, though you don't get from their perspective as characters, they are real characters. These people do exist. Versions of these people do exist, especially in these small enclaves where you do have the backdrop of the private school with all of the politics and vibes and culture there.
Yeah, it had a lot of Big Little Lies vibes. If you guys either watched the show or read the book, it very, very similar. So let's go to our next question. It says, think about the ways in which blame is shown in the novel. Do you think that characters are justified in pointing fingers at the people they deem responsible? Would you have acted similarly if you had been in the same position?
How are you defining who is at fault?
Well, I mean, I think that in this particular case, everybody was very willing and quick to blame all the women in various ways.
For sure.
Where in reality, at the end, when you really listed off everybody's offenses, the men were by far the ones who, and Peter by far is the one who was at fault. And so it's interesting. I think the way that they show is that, yes, people are very quick to blame, and in particularly very quick to blame women. And I thought the part when they're talking about I do all these different things, and if one thing doesn't work out, it's basically all my fault. And boy, as we're preparing for Christmas and stuff and things coming up and for the holidays and everybody trying to organize schedules and things and gifts and all this stuff, boy, do I feel like there's a heightened sense of everybody better do their friggin' part or else who's to blame? Who's to blame? Who could we say is at fault for ruining this or that? And it's man, I wish people would not do that. I would like to think I wouldn't act similarly. I don't necessarily need to know who's at fault in a situation. A lot of times I need to know the why. I don't care if you're the one that did it, but why did you do it? Why did you do what you did? Because I want to understand more than I want to blame. So I think I wouldn't act similarly. How about you?
Well, I wanted to talk about the blaming the women because in the question, it came up. Someone had asked the showrunner for the TV show, Megan Gallagher, in answering a question about why she shifted the story from Dublin and the suburbs of Dublin to Chicago. She said the transition came easily, noting that the series' central themes of guilt and pressure on working mothers translates anywhere, and that she herself, frequently with her job in Hollywood, trying to, be a mother as well as a working person in Hollywood, felt a lot of those same pressures that she was picking up in the book and seeing in the book. And so she wanted to make sure that came across in the TV show as well. And the idea that it doesn't have to be in Dublin or in Chicago or anywhere, this idea that we are always very quick to blame the moms and point fingers at them. It resonates. It happens because it happens. It is the experience that working moms in particular feel a lot of times, but all moms who are holding down their house and who are doing all the scheduling, the finger is very quick to always point at them.
I also think there's a part to that where it's fathers claim to be the protectors of the family. They'll be I'm the protector. But when a child gets hurt or something happens, it's where was the mom?
Yeah.
No one says, where was the dad when he fell? Or where was the dad when he fell into the swimming pool or whatever? Nobody ever says that.
Yeah,
nobody ever says that.
No one in the book, and they corrected this in the TV show, no one ever turns to Richie and say, what questions did you ask Carrie before you hired her as, as the minder?
It's all Jenny. It's all the mom.
Right. Where were you, Peter, when, Milo was at his play date and picking him up kind of thing, so no one ever asks those questions. But why don't they ask those questions? Even in the TV show, the detective, he keeps asking Marissa if they've been approached for a ransom notice. And she keeps saying, no, my husband wouldn't do that. He wouldn't keep that from me. So no, we haven't received anything. And he had, but the detective never thinks to go and ask Peter about it.
I don't know if it's that he never thinks to ask Peter about it. I think he thinks Peter's not going to tell him the answer. And so that's a completely different take on that, because I don't think he's sitting there being oh, I guess I should just ask the woman. I don't think it's like that. I think it's that he repeatedly throughout the show has a rapport with her that is much different than him. And I think that there's a lot of the way Peter answers and the way everything versus like Marissa was like boots on the ground when this all happened and was in it and like kind of a part of it in terms of the text messaging and the showing up and all the things that like it makes sense to focus more on her.
And yet Peter's entire personality, and even more so in the TV show, is I am the protector. Mm-hmm. I am the taker care of. But you're not being very boots on the ground here. You're being performatively boots on the ground at best.
All right, let's answer this one because this one's a big one. Were there any moments you found particularly surprising or shocking? What a wild question so early on. When we got to the part about that there was a car accident and that they had crossed paths years prior, that was like when I was like, oh my God. Like the idea that they both had brand new newborn babies, both coming home from the hospital at the same time. All of those things happening. The accident itself was shocking on the screen, even in the book was very surprising and shocking. The death of the infant was shocking and surprising. And, you said they didn't kill a kid. They killed a kid. And so that was a shock for me because I kind of had this armor up like, oh, I'm fine. They're not going to do anything to Milo. I just know it in my heart. I just know they're not going to harm him. But I didn't suspect that they would have, essentially, they really did kill infant Milo in the story. Wow. Yeah, that was probably the most shocking for me.
I agree. And I liked it because they had planted seeds for it. So while the reveal came late of the accident and the baby switch and the death of actual baby Milo, they had planted the seeds often about the fact that there had been this accident that no one talks about. She had surgery and she was in the hospital for quite a long time. And all the whispers were all of the plastic surgery that she got. And her face wasn't even recognizable, Marissa, from before and after, all of that kind of stuff. So they planted the seeds that there was something in the past that we just weren't focused on because we're trying to focus on finding Milo, right? So we're not delving into the personal, but because they had planted the seeds, I like that. I like the reward of that twist. That's something where you can go back and when you reread the book and be like, oh yeah, okay, here are seeds that they are planting. Here are some clues. And the synesthesia, which, they play up much more frequently throughout the book than they do in the TV show. When the reveals started coming, you were able to look back and think, oh yeah, okay, so they were showing us. They were dropping hints, and I really like that. I think for me, the most shocking thing was, and I kind of hinted at it before, was the fact that Milo was returned, and I looked at how many pages were left, and there was a lot of books still left. So for me, that was kind of shocking, because I was like, well, where do we go now? Like, I feel like, are we just leaving Act 1 here? Like, what's actually happening here? So I think that was very surprising to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, let's get into number 4. All Her Fault takes place in a wealthy suburb in Dublin. How is the setting used to explore themes of inclusion and exclusion? Which characters hold the most social power, and in what ways do they use this power?
I think this is very much a story about haves and have-nots, right? This is from income levels and access. I mean, how much of what Anna was telling Carrie about the Irvines had to do with how big their house was and how much money they had. And Anna had her beater car of her very own to drive around. And because I remember Detective McConneville like spinning her head. She's like, you have a third car just for your nanny to go around in? I think the Detective McConneville character brings up at one point, like, people from inner city and lower income brackets don't get to play in murder and kidnap without there being consequences. Milos don't come home at the lower income brackets kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so you have that, but then you also, in the end, you have a baby and don't have a baby. There's currency and status in having a kid and in having a nanny and in the school that you go to. And just the way the moms at the school are. None of them really lift a finger to help in the search. They just want to sit and gossip and judge. Yet they all have minders. They don't even use nannies, right? They say kid minders or child minders. They all have them, but they're pointing at Jenny as bringing a monster into their fold and blaming Marissa for not knowing where her kid was. It's all about inclusion and exclusion. Even at the highest income level, then it's, you didn't do good parenting, so you're excluded, or you know what I mean? So I think they were playing with the idea of have nots, inclusion, exclusion on a lot of different levels.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely showed, like, let's say in the TV show, I mean, they showed very much how Carrie's upbringing was very different and much more difficult. Even, I think, you have all these marriages, and then you have, Carrie coming from a situation where she, barely kind of sees her dad and sort of knows he exists and sort of interacts with him at some points. But it really got to me, like, certain parts, like when you talk about have and have nots, like even just talking about having two parents, like the idea, there was a part when she was sitting in the car and she was complaining about Irene, and her dad was basically like, yeah, well, divorce means I don't have to deal with her anymore, so see you later. And she's like, well, but can I live with you? And he's like, no. Like, yeah, I know she's tough, but like, too bad. This is what divorce is. Like, I get to walk away from all this. And I was feeling so terrible for her, because I'm like, at what point you don't walk away from your daughter? And also, like, that this person, Irene, is like a bad lady and is like hard to be with. Like, she doesn't have a soft place to fall. Carrie doesn't have a safety net. And that's something that, the rest of these families, for as much as they have disagreements amongst the spouses and stuff like that, there is sort of still like this sense that, like, for their kids, at least, that their kids have what they need. Are they there for each other? I would highly question that and say, no, not in good ways. The have and have nots, like, go beyond money. Like, it's who has comfort, who has safety, who has stability in their life, who knows where their next meal is coming from, who doesn't, like all of those things. I think what we found out is that people like Peter, who like very much interject their level of control in a situation, they seem to hold the most social power in this. Like even the woman mom who was like the volunteer captain, she had like this whole other like attitude, like she had power, social power, because she was able to like basically inject herself into people's lives and try to control what was going on. Like Jenny, trying to control her and trying to make her volunteer and stuff. Like it's a low level thing, but it's still social power in its own little way. It was interesting to see everybody flex in their own ways. Because
at that level, then the economy is the same. The financial aspect is the same at that level. So then it really is social power and the have and have nots, inclusion and exclusion. It's like that party, the flashback that they go to the parents' social hour. That's where Jenny and Marissa meet and they're wearing the same dress. Sarah and the coven there, they kind of stand there like a Death Star, talking and gossiping and bringing Jenny in and be like, oh, you met Marissa, you met the Irvines and this and that. Like they know everyone, they know where all the bodies are buried, or at least, and if they don't, they just make it up. They just make it up and they spread their gossip and their bile. That is the social power, because everyone's got the same financial, or is in the same range of financial at that level. So this story is not about lifting up together. It's about stepping on someone to be ahead in one way or another, whether it is Peter switching the babies, or it is, Carrie not having the financial stability and comfort stability that the higher income people have, or, I think the only really kind of good relationship to come out of this is Marissa and Jenny. I think the book actually does a really good job kind of painting a friendship against all odds.
They had a real vibe of, remember, Kevin Can Fuck Himself? They had a real vibe of
Patty and Allison.
Of Patty and Allison, like completely like them.
Very much so. And then Esther and Jenny. There's gonna be some twist here where Esther is actually gonna be the mastermind behind all of this or something. But it didn't, and she wasn't, and she was a very sweet Nana type, and she's there for Jenny, and she's gonna be Jacob's new minder going forward, and they have a good relationship at a time when Jenny desperately needs someone to be with and to bond with that's not Marissa, because she's in her own free fall as the mom being blamed for bringing Carrie into this world.
Well, let's talk about Jenny a little bit. Let's consider Jenny's character, right? So how does she approach balancing her professional life with being a mother? Do you think it's possible to achieve a perfect work-life balance? I would like to say a professional life with being a parent, because I think that, you know, you're a dad, but you are just as much involved as any typical mom. So I feel like we should say a work-life balance as a parent. Is that ever really possible?
I mean, it's a constant spinning plates and juggling knives. Is it possible to achieve the perfect work-life balance? No, I think that's a fairy tale. The perfect work-life balance, I don't think exists. I mean, I am blessed to be able to work from home and be there for Tom in everything he does. And even still, I feel like I regularly fail in my work-life balance. So no, I just don't think that's possible. But I think it becomes even infinitely harder when you have to take care of all of the kid stuff, right? We saw, I think we saw from Richie and from Peter, and this doesn't have to be a wife husband thing at all, but I think the idea of 80-20 relationships is very real, especially with parenting. I feel like a lot of relationships, there's the 80% parent and then the 20% parent. It is hard if you're being the 80, 90, 100% parent and the other parent gets to skate by as being the 20, 10, 0% parent. It's hard to feel like you're ever doing anything right. Work is failing if you're giving all your kid all of the time they need. Your kid is failing, or you're failing your kid in somehow if you're paying remote attention to trying to be good at your job or excel at your job or get a promotion at your job like Jenny is trying to, or has gotten a promotion. I imagine her position of being in Paris on a work thing that she doesn't even really want to be at. I mean, there is the attraction with Mark in the book that's not in the TV show. So there is kind of like a flirtation there that she's maybe a little excited by, but she's more than anything weighed down by, I think, her guilt that Richie definitely, you know, feeds and stokes the fire of for not being there for Jacob when he goes to sleep, when he's getting home from school and activities or whatever. I think she's feeling that acutely. And obviously Marissa is. Marissa's the one who didn't call the phone number to confirm the play date. You know, she just took it on a text message. She's the one showing up. But she's also the one who had to duck out of work, out of her legal job, out of her lawyer job to go get the kid from the play date. Peter seems to like work from home, and with his brother who lives next door in the house, like, why wasn't he the one getting Mile there? Because she was one charged with the responsibility of setting it all up.
So I think work-life balance is impossible. I don't think that that's really, certainly not perfect. I mean, you can do your very best and you can try.
Aspirational.
For a lot of parents, whoever the default parent is, and it tends to be women, but it can also be the husband. And things that Richie did, I mean, we're talking specifically about Jenny's character in this question. And so for me, like Richie and his treatment of her, the part in the show when he says he was just trying to teach her a lesson, like allow her to like spend more time with Jacob by him sitting and scrolling on, TikTok and playing on his phone and like eating chips in the parking lot. Like he was so like, that was such a disgusting interaction. And I feel like it rings across the nation and probably the world for so many people to have a partner who's like that, who thinks that they need to teach you a lesson. Like I'm already barfing in my mouth, but just the absolute disrespect. I don't care about your time. I don't care that I'm ruining your career, all the things. Like it's just terrible. So for Jenny, I mean, I think that she was phenomenal for finding the courage to being able to go over and talk to Marissa. That's one thing that I think that maybe a parent or anybody could take from this book is like the difference between if Jenny had just hidden away and just tried to deflect and tried to just act like, well, it's not us. Don't look at us. Versus what she did, which was take as much responsibility as she could, show up and help, be in, shoulder to cry on, all the things. Like, I think that's a really good lesson for most of us to like, own it and be there. And that's what matters most.
Richie is interesting because he sucks in two totally different ways, depending if you're reading the book or the TV show. He sucks in the book because he still sloughs off onto Jenny all of these responsibilities, even though he is a teacher who has a matching schedule to his kid, still refuses to do any of the immediate after school things. Mm-hmm. But then he has his mother, who he's a total little bitch baby of, with old Adeline there. And that's just a disgusting little relationship. And his picking up the notes and just reading them, the blind notes, and then just concocting an entire story without ever actually giving her the chance to explain herself. And just the way he does finally stand up to the mom and stuff. But man, he allows a wedge to be driven in there that there's really no way to come back from. And then in the TV show, the mom, it doesn't exist. She's not a factor. The secret notes aren't a factor. But he's such a slovenly, useless piece of shit in the TV show that it's sucking in a whole other way that is really gross. Like that scene where she fronts him, and I'm so sad for Jacob is in the car when all that happens. It's one thing that I wish she had dropped him somewhere.
Well, but they were outside the car, so I'm hoping that
but the windows were open though. Like I noticed, I was checking. I was like, how much of this is he picking up? But she had to do it though. It was unconscionable. And then, like you said, when he said, I thought it was a good lesson for you. Well, literally,
oh my God,
literally while the reels are playing on his phone and there's chips on his face and his his
I would have kicked him in the crotch,
I don't
y'all.
know how
like
she didn't beat him.
There's no way that I could handle it. I couldn't. Like my rage would have been like through the roof on that. Like, oh my God, it's just painful. But
does Richie's, not to excuse his mother's interference, but in the book that he does have this suspect of her having maybe some kind of romance with Mark, because I thought the connection was going to be she does tell Carrie that night over wine when she gets a little drunk. She tells Carrie about Mark, and so then Mark is being very like suspicious kind of acting, because one of my late night predictions I made to myself was that I thought he was actually going to file divorce from her because he was told by Carrie about there being this other guy. And she admits that something did almost happen with Mark. It sounds like maybe they kissed, but she didn't let it go any further. Nothing penetrative happened anyway. But she was tempted, and you could see why she would be tempted with what she was coming home to and those stresses. But does that make his position and his kind of coldness to her a little more defensible? Because that none of that exists in the TV show. So he has zero defenses. But does her not coming clean about that and the late night texting with the work person, like, does, instead of emails and stuff, even though it's about work stuff, like,
I mean, I just think he's
it?
still
I don't
like
know.
a coward. Like
Sure,
if you want to talk about something, then talk about something, like he's being so like awful about how he's handling everything. And you know what? It's just control. It's all control. And it's like so painful because we see the same story with Peter. He's just more effective at sort of reigning the house, but Richie wants to in his own weird way. But then he basically wants to be like the king of the house, but he just wants servants. He doesn't actually like want to have a queen. He just wants her to like do everything. I mean, when he's texting her at a work meeting, like, where's his sippy cup kind of crap, I'm sorry, I would turn my phone off. Like, that's insane. Like, you know what? You guys are going to live until I get home. Like, that's insane. You can figure it out. The weaponized incompetence of it all, it's just so painful.
But it was so effective though because it's so real, Caroline.
It is. Yes, you don't have to tell me.
We both know weaponized incompetence like this in relationships.
Oh,
like,
sure.
And it's funny because you mentioned something that just rang about, like, this idea of weaponized silence also, which is what Richie really does in the book. By not confronting her, having these suspicions and not confronting her makes it so much worse, because then you're just making her spin. Then you're just putting her into a buffering of, she doesn't know why you're acting the way you're acting, because you're not speaking to her. And it's beyond the weaponized incompetence. It's like something else, but you won't tell her what.
Well, this is passive aggressive. Like, that's
Yes,
different.
that's
But
the
that's
word.
like
That's the
so
phrase.
ugly. I mean, it's so ugly. And we're going to get into it with the show when we get into casting. But based on our Gilded Age coverage, I pretty much felt like the actor that plays Richie is like doomed to be on our bad list. So I had a hard time just overall because it's just this character is like so not redeeming. Like, I'm like, get out of here. I don't want this guy Richie in anyone's lives.
Number 6, discuss the theme of guilt in the novel. Who do you think was most responsible for Milo's disappearance? How did your opinions change throughout the novel? Did you sympathize with some characters more than others?
I didn't blame anyone. Like I said, for some reason, I was like staying very much on the outside. Like I was like listening and watching people blame each other, but I wasn't actively blaming. What do I think, having finished both the novel and the show? Peter is responsible for the disappearance of Milo because he was driving the car when Milo got killed, and then he stole another baby. He's the cause of everything. Had he not crashed the car, Milo would be alive. So start with that. And then nothing else would have happened from that.
Did you find yourself retroactively sympathetic or really even identifying for what Carrie must have gone through all these 4 years in the book, 5 going on 6 years in the TV show?
Well, yeah. I mean, I sympathize with her. Honestly, I felt most for her when they portrayed her in the TV show as when she was pregnant and she was like shopping in the maternity shop and she was like looking at the baby clothes and the crib and stuff. That's when I actually had the most heart for her. Like I was really sad for her, concerned for her. The moment in the car with her dad when, she was completely rejected and told she has to go live with an unfit parent just because he didn't feel like dealing with her. He didn't have any responsibility, he felt like, anymore, even though this was his kiddo. So I think overall, like, I had a lot of heart for Carrie at that point, like, as we learn more. And that's where I think in the book, having Irene be a part of it really helped me have more compassion for Carrie too, because as soon as Irene was like looking to make a buck, the way she was treating Frank, the way that she was like, I'm not going to the police to help the police find a kid. Like you automatically knew Irene was like bad bananas. Like she was not somebody you wanted as a friend. She's not somebody you want as a parent for sure. I had levels of compassion for Carrie the whole time. Like I actually at no point was angry at Carrie. I know that sounds weird because I was in the 30s, somewhere in the 30s chapter. So I'm going to say like 33, 34, somewhere around there, when I texted you and said, okay, I feel like in my head, this is my internal monologue. The only reason why a 22-year-old would take this child is if she felt that this child was owed to her in some way. So what does that mean? Is this And how I came up with it, this was my little story. I told myself that maybe she had been like their egg donor and that somehow she had, given eggs maybe because she was, hard up for money, whatever. And that somehow she just felt like Milo was her child. And because of that, she had rights to him and she regretted the decisions that she made, whatever. This is the story I made up for myself. So because of that, so early on, I made up this, what I would consider a very compassionate story for her, that somehow she kind of got wrapped up in somehow thinking Milo was hers. But that was the motivation for me. And so because it was, and it wasn't like malicious, I never thought she was going to kill him. I never thought she was going to harm him. I was like, this is just a matter of figuring out why does she think this child is hers? I never actually thought he was hers. Exactly. Not really, not as obvious as he is hers. I always thought there was going to be something, like I said, with like the egg donation, where it would be like fuzzy about like, well, she signed papers, and so is this child hers or is this child not hers? This was so much more straightforward, honestly, in terms of like, it's definitely her kid, and Peter definitely stole it, and definitely like lied to everybody on everything.
The TV show makes it clear she realizes it early on, because she finds the Irvines on social media and sees pictures of Milo and the likeness to Kyle and to Kyle's father. Mm-hmm. And so she, at least without proof, but she has the flickers of hope much earlier on. In the book, I think it's more that she tracks them down because she remembers their name. but I think she initially starts out for revenge. I don't think she realizes that Milo's actually hers until she's already in the circuit of their life when she overhears the synesthesia conversation at the park. I think she wants to harass Peter Irvine because he like kind of bullied her in the hospital and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she blames him for the death of her baby as the other driver of the car, as much as she wants to lash out at anyone. I don't think she actually puts together that like, oh no, like that's actually my child until she actually meets Milo later on. I never had sympathy for Carrie through most of the story. I did at the end when the twist comes out about what Peter did.
Let me say it differently. I don't want to be confused. I said I had compassion for her, meaning like I thought she had a really shitty upbringing. And the thing that we are forgetting is she was 22 when she took Milo. How old was she when she was pregnant? When we were seeing those
16,
pregnancy,
right?
Yeah. So like, let's back it down a little. She's a kid. Like I had a lot of compassion for her because she was 16 and a kid and living in the trailer, having like no support and like doing everything she could. So I had compassion for her from the sense of like, God, you are starting off in an awful circumstance. I
think the TV show makes you feel compassion, if not sympathy, for her much earlier on.
Yes.
I'm more focused on the book. I think I took her more as just trying to do a financial transaction on a rich family that she came to know, because once you learn Irene and, you know, apples and trees being what they are, I was angry with her because I was just assuming she was just trying to cash in the same way that her mother would have, without like missing a beat from what we learned out of it. And Rob Murphy too, from what we learned about him as her father, you know, that genetic makeup. Like I very easily just assumed until the real twist came out at the end that she took Milo, not because I thought she was going to kill him or anything, but I figured it was like a ransom demand. I did think that. I thought that that's what it was going to be. So I didn't feel compassion or sympathy for her. Other beyond, I would hate for anyone to have to grow up with Irene or Rob Murphy as parents. I think we're supposed to feel bad for Jenny because she feels this guilt about bringing Carrie into everyone's life. And I think the other mothers at the school, Sarah and the Coven, I think they explicitly say you should feel bad about this. But I never really felt bad for her, though, because I think that's nonsense. She had no way to know. She did the diligence that anyone probably would have done. It sounds like she did the diligence that anyone would have done in this situation. And all of these people do for their minders. And it had been 6 months of it working out great. I don't think there was any red flags here for her to catch on to, other than maybe, I don't know that I would ever have a 22-year-old living in my house, but that's a totally other thing, though. As far as sympathy goes, I felt bad for Marissa because she was the one who arranged the play date and didn't inspect it. She met a woman. They said we should have a play date. A week later, she gets a text. She doesn't vet it. She shows up. I would like to think that I would have done some kind of follow-up conversation or some kind of proof instead of a number I just didn't know, or tried, or, you know, I think I feel like I would have done more work to verify that.
Oh, I would not have. I'm not going to even pretend I would have. If someone texted me a number I didn't know and said, "This is Jenny," there's no part of me that would check to see if that was
because
Jenny.
It was connecting dots. We said we'd have a play date. Here you are following up in short order about
and
play
you
date.
said this is Jenny,
right? So I think she has all this guilt, but at the same time, she's got a full plate of things to do. She's desperate for her kid to get to know someone at this new school. This woman was someone who didn't seem like a horrible person. Like, it all kind of checked in boxes. I see why it happened. So I feel the most sympathy for her, because you can point at and be like, and like the mothers do in the school, they do point the finger, and the people on social media that aren't horrible and saying it was all staged, the ones who take it for what actually happened, lambast her for not doing the diligence to make sure she was dropping her kid off. Like, you didn't know where your kid was. Shame on you. And I feel very bad for that, because where was her help? And I think a lot of us in a modern day could have done the same thing.
I think most of us, 99% of us, would have done the same thing. Honestly. I mean, you didn't just meet a woman. You met a mom at a school function.
At a very closed
you know the
universe
kids.
school, right?
Yeah, and you know the kids, and she's on your class list, and she's not just like a stranger. She's not just some woman who mentioned a play date. This is a classmate. It's literally a classmate. And so, like, why would you even think twice about, any of it? None of it would seem alarming to me. Now, here's the thing that I think that this shines a really good light on, which is you can know the people who you hire for your kids, like Anna. And you can think that, there's nothing, I'm sure there was nothing on Anna's background check that would say she's a blabbermouth, that would say that she's going to tell all your family secrets, including your finances and how big your child's bedroom is and all of her favorite toys and everything. Like, who would know that somebody would do that and like say all that? And then additionally, it's always those people who are one step removed from the people you know. So the fact that Anna is hanging out with Carrie and you never even met Carrie, or it could be a boyfriend or it could be a best friend of that helper. Like, you never really know who's hanging out with your kids. I know you and I have had conversations about there being like other family members in the house that you may or may not know when they're there and your kid might be playing there. Maybe a grandparent, maybe. And it's like you don't even know those people are in the house of the family that you thought you knew, And it's like there's always those. There's always, oh my gosh, the cruise ship thing where the older stepbrother probably just killed the stepsister. So who knows what's going on within your own home, the other people of the house. You don't know who else is coming into the mix, So I thought that it did shine a really awesome light on that. And I have 3 special needs kids, and we're going to get into some of the diversity that was shown in the show as opposed to the book. Part of that for me is hiring a lot of helpers. And one of the things for me is anytime a helper says they want to take the kiddo to their own home, in my brain, I think, oh, well, that's okay. Like, if you guys want to go to your house and that's where you're going to eat lunch or something like that, seems okay. But again, I don't know who else is home. I don't know who else is there. I don't know all the other family members, or if a neighbor stops by, or if there's a repairman in the house, or something that I have no control over that's going to cross my kid's path. If you're going to talk about what scared me the most, that and probably the car accident with the baby scared me the most as like a real life thing versus the kidnapping part, because the kidnapping was so specific. They did a really good job of making it not random so that we could have that sense of safety. Like, oh, it can't happen to us because I didn't steal someone else's kid, so they're not going to come steal my kids. You know what I mean? Like, you can make like an excuse of why there's no way this Milo thing is happening in your house.
That's the Jenny being responsible for bringing Carrie in, because for most of the book, it could have been Anna. It could have been Sarah's minder. It could have been any of them. There was no red flag here about Carrie. She was as good or innocuous or unthreatening as any of the other minders that we see. In fact, she had 2 little boys who wanted to go hang out with her. You know what I mean? Like, there was nothing. It could have been any of them. If someone wants to take your kid, that's like kind of the lesson, right? For if you're going to be paranoid coming out of this book, is you don't know where your kid is. You don't know who they are with a lot of the times. And it could have been any of these minders, like this was Marissa's the local lawyer and Peter is the local investment banker. Like, they are known people. People know they have money in town. They deal with all of them. Marissa represents their estates and Peter represents their finances for a lot of these families. Anna's not the only one. Like, Carrie could have probably found out the information she found out from Anna from any of the other minders that she would have made friends with about who are those Irvines. Like, you don't know what information is out there about you and what people know or don't know about you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they were shocked when Anna was just when she finally came clean that not only did she know Carrie, she told them every goddamn secret she ever knew under the sun about him. You could feel how much Marissa and Peter wanted to throttle her, but also, well, of course. Yeah. She has your kid all day, like they're at the playground together kind of thing, like they're going to talk.
Well, that's a perfect segue into our next question, because it says many of the characters in the novel are quick to spread rumors and gossip, both online and in person. Do you think social media makes it easier to judge other people's behavior? How does Andrea Mara use the local rumor mill to increase the tension in the book? Which is just what you were talking about. I mean, I think the author did a really good job of having those other mothers, talking, all that background stuff about like, are they doing this for a book deal? Did they stage this entire thing? You know, is that what's going on? All that kind of stuff. Like, I think that part that was in the show, that was very, like, I thought very impactful. Like the whole idea that this book deal, like, that threw me so much. I was like, oh my God, that's what they're having to be up against? Like that people would think they would actually do this as like a stunt, you know, like this is so crazy, you know, that's where people would go.
But
at the same time,
this was one of the most real aspects of the book, because you and I are on Facebook, we're on X, Twitter, we're on Reddit. You know, these are cesspools for this exact kind of thing. The assume the worst because you know an ounce of fact and an ocean of story, and then you know all of it, right? That the keyboard warriors are out there in force all the time. It really twisted my stomach, but it also hit me the hardest because this felt the most real of how people in 2025 would react.
Do you know what part did not feel as real? And it's well within this gossipy kind of part. Again, Jenny having the backbone to walk up to the three parents that were standing there sort of always as like the judgy ones, like looking at everybody. She walked right up there and they would like ask her something like, oh, so Milo was on. And she just answered. She didn't do anything like just hustle off to her car or like the move you would see in any TV or movie is they would hunch their shoulders. She would put her purse up on her shoulder real tight and hunch her shoulders up and just kind of like walk to her car, like real, like trying to hunch down. She didn't. She like walked right over to them. And when they had shit to say, she just corrected the information and like told them. I gave Jenny like so much props for that because there were very few people. It's, well, again, one thing to show up at Marissa's house and kind of deal with her one-on-one. Another thing to be willing to go against the peanut gallery who's all like just talking shit about you, like standing outside. That was another thing. I give her a lot of credit because I think that's the only way you can deal with rumors and gossip is by like confronting them straight on and being like, that's not the deal. That's not what's happening. And she did that. She corrected a lot of stuff. And I think that was really beneficial to the story.
You and I, you know, co-own a Pod Clubhouse. We record a ton of content, hours and hours of our voices being out there. I could fill a podcast episode with mean comments written about me over the years of doing this. And these people don't know me. People don't know you. They don't know the people who record with us. And yet they feel licensed to say vile things and hurtful things. And so I'm speaking as someone who's in that position and you've been in that position, but also, you know, things that people say behind the anonymity of their keyboards is unhinged, parasocial, and just the most vile, vitriolic things about people you don't know, about people you will never know, just from something you believe to be true. It's one of the most disturbing developments, I think, in our country, if not the world, in the last 10 years or so. How nasty we are as a society towards people we don't know at all. This book very much brought that to the forefront, listening to the radio or reading the Facebook comments or the social media comments that they were posting about, because the show and the book advertise a lot of the looking for Milo utilizes the internet to spread the word. And that then opens the door to people saying really horrific things about Marissa as a mother and Peter and the family, and even Jenny, you know, in her social circles about being the one who hired her, and the Richie Riches, they don't even look at their own kids and all this stuff. Like, you don't know any of their stories, and yet people get out there and leave their comments.
The saying, like, it's hard to hate up close is like is an important one for me and in this context, because I think that's what Jenny did. Jenny got up close. She didn't allow people to keep her at an arm's length where those rumors could just thrive. Instead, she would get up close, where it's really hard to hate someone when they get up close to you and you actually know them and you interact with them and you talk with them. You look at them in their eyes. It's very difficult to hate somebody. It's so much easier if you keep them at this arm's length and can just hate from afar. that was the genius of Jenny. She's like, if you're going to hate me, you're going to hate me like within 6 inches of me. And that's really hard to do.
This third part of this question, how does Andrea Mara use local rumor mill to increase attention in the book? This was something that it's definitely hinted at in the book, but the TV show, they say it explicitly. The Sarah Snook, as Marissa says explicitly, Peter, this is bad, because he's trying to be like, don't listen to them, those crackpots, they don't know us, they're just saying shit. But she makes the point of, if people read things other people write and believe it, that idea that they will be less likely to want to help us find Milo. And you know what? She's right.
Yeah, you need to be likable.
Right. If you're not likable, if you're this inaccessible ivory tower family, boo-hoo, your kid was taken, that's a real thing you do have to be worried about. Your likability, as perceived by strangers, will affect how they resonate, whether or not to help you in a time of need.
Yeah,
it's
true.
crazy. It's a missing 4-year-old or a 5-year-old turning 6 in the show. Like, that's all you should have to know to want to go help find them.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. So let's move to the end of the book here. Considering how the final chapters played out, did you have any different ideas for how the novel might end while you were reading? Well, like I said, I thought she could have a couple different reasons why she thought Milo was her child. So I had come up with this whole egg donor story in my mind of why it could have ended up in a similar but different way. Did you have any different ideas for how this novel might wrap up?
I didn't see the baby switch until the very end. So I thought it was wrapped up in Colin embezzling money from the Downey family and the sports book betting family in the novel, which then would tie to Rob Murphy. I thought maybe Peter was wrapped up in some kind of fraud embezzling thing along with Colin, because there's that whole, when they go to the office, Marissa and Peter, to look for the missing files that because Colin had disappeared at that point. They don't know what had happened to them. And Peter finds a piece of paper that the book tells us he makes a face at and then just sticks in the file. That's where he learned that Carrie and Colin had him involved in stuff. So I thought it was all financial. I thought it was going to be something with the embezzling and the frauding in the lawyer's office.
So we're going to switch into the TV show discussion portion a little bit. So on its own, what did you think of the TV show? It basically had, for me, like the same skeleton of the story with like different bones coming off of it, right? Like the meat and the ribs and the whatnot were different. And some of the things that they changed, I thought was great. Other parts, I was like, my only issue with it wasn't actually the change. It was that because I just read the book and because I was watching the show, because they changed so many different parts, I had to keep checking back with myself and being like, wait, that wasn't her job in the book. Wait, that wasn't, okay, hold on. Like, I had to keep checking myself. That was the only thing that I was annoyed by the changes, is because it made me check myself. But other than that, I actually thought the majority of changes were really good. I thought that they added to the story and were important, I think, for some of the visual aspects.
Yeah, I think on the whole, I like the book better than the TV show, but I think they changed how they got to the story and how they approached telling the story was so different for me. The not only the shift perspectives and the things they added and the things they deducted, but for me, the TV show was much more of a police procedural, like the way a police procedural would be investigated. And the less focus on the Marissa-Jenny relationship and so those women relationships, but still blaming the working mom and the stress of the working parent also doing the child duty, I think was still there. But I think the tone shift to it being more of a police procedural really made it a separate product. I could watch this and read the book side by side. And even if I'm sure that it's going to end up being the same, though, I'll tell you, until the end, I really thought that they were going to change. I thought they were actually going to change the reasoning, and then they do come clean with the car accident at the very, very end. But because they waited so long to do that, and they had changed so much else, I thought that they were going to do away with the car accident and the switch babies, because when she is pulling the pieces of the crib and then she starts beating it against the side of the trailer and then bends over, And then the next time we see her, she's in the hospital. She's lost a lot of blood. I thought she was going to have had a miscarriage. Right. So I thought it was going down the line of she wanted the Irvine's baby as like restitution for a baby she lost, like miscarriage.
I definitely think that they were guiding us to think that she had had a miscarriage. I mean, visually, that's what they were showing us.
Right, and but like a fish was right on the hook and being like, okay, yeah, no, that works for you. Because it would have. I mean, I think that's an interesting story of like mental health and anguish.
Right. There was something about it that made her feel like she was owed a child. And we didn't know how, we didn't know exactly why, but either way, even if it was a miscarriage, you could still go with the owed a child, because of the whole situation.
I think I did miss the deeper Jenny Marissa relationship because I really like that storyline in the book. And I felt like that was sacrificed for a lot more detective storyline. I think having more Irene, I think they overcame that because you actually got more flashback of Carrie herself with Kyle as an expectant mother in the end. So maybe you needed less Irene, the bad mom. Right,
because she didn't have to provide the context as much. All of that point of view part, they actually showed us her upbringing a little bit instead of...
But the husbands were still, weaponized, stupidity and really useless. Useless to deadly, honestly. But then they added the Leah and the Colin relationship and all of the Peter really uber control stuff. But, Megan Gallagher wanted to tell this story, but with some embellishments that she thought were important to put on screen. Because of that, you had to go down the path that they did. I found this helpful especially when we were doing Behind Her Eyes, discussing the casting. I thought that actually was an interesting conversation and, just talking about the cast and did they match what you had in your head. So let's start with Sarah Snook, Shiv from Succession, which is how I know her otherwise. What did you think of her as Marissa? Did she strike the balance of professional woman with a sense of humor, but also empathetic and a sympathetic figure here? How did she carry the show for you?
So, yes, I mean, I think Sarah Snook is amazing and she did a great job of, I think, portraying a woman who was, vacillating between strength and breaking down. And there were some moments in the show, like when she kind of like sank behind the kitchen island and was kind of shaking and getting really upset, that I thought was phenomenal acting on her part. She did a really good job of doing what I think a lot of very strong women in particular would do, which is sort of like have tears in their eyes, but like still be pushing forward and doing everything that needed to get done. So I think she was great casting. I also thought that she was like, her red hair and everything was like a little nod to it being from Ireland. I felt like, and so that I thought was kind of cool.
When I saw that she had been cast in the show, because I had seen the trailer before we even decided to do, I think, this book, I had seen the trailer and knew she was leading the show. I assumed she was going to be using kind of her British accent or Irish accent because of the red hair and stuff. So I was really surprised when she's still doing an American accent and it's in Chicago. So that did surprise me. Yeah, but I think the red hair and that look was like definitely a nod to Ireland. What do you think of them making her? This is one of those changes where you kind of wonder, like, why did they have to change that? Instead of being a solicitor or lawyer, they make her a wealth manager here. She still partners with Colin, but they run a wealth management firm, which is what Peter does actually in the book. And here they make him a commodities trader.
I'm not sure why they felt the need to change that. That was one of those that just seemed like a change for the change sake. I'm not sure. I didn't see any utility in having her be a different profession. I'm not sure why we would need to do that.
And as a lawyer, the idea of stealing funds it's much more egregious for a lawyer to do it than for Colin to be doing it as a wealth manager. Yes, it's very bad for a wealth manager to be moving around funds from accounts to accounts, especially if the girl that he's sleeping with, the woman he's sleeping with, he's also managing her fund, her trust fund, Leah, and then takes the money out of it. Like, all very bad. But there was something that was, there's only a couple of rules that they really drill into you when you're in law school, and then when you do your CLEs and stuff, like your continuing legal education. You don't steal your client's money. That's like the thing that they care about the fucking most.
Wow.
You can do a lot of shit, but don't take the money. Don't commingle funds and don't take your client's money. That is like, go to jail, do not pass go, do not collect $200. Like, very bad. Don't do it. So
to change that is interesting. Let's move on to Jake Lacy, because he plays Peter, and man, I remember him from White Lotus. He was such a douchebag guy in that show. I swear to God, he makes me worried that he's going to typecast himself into a douchebag role, and that is all he's going to get. But I thought he played it very effectively, and he certainly was the type. He was sort of the good jaw, tall, handsome kind of guy that was like,
psycho
okay.
eyes, though, that really like pierce you.
Yeah, the whole "you can't run away from me."
Yeah, the person who like leaves a mark on your arm as they're telling you how much they love you and you can never leave. I mean, he literally tells his siblings, like, I need you to need me in order to give my life purpose. Like, he literally says that to his siblings. And he says it essentially says it to Marissa. I mean, that's how he controls his life. And I think Jake Lacy sells that perfectly, because his White Lotus character was kind of like a younger version of this guy. Kind of like a finance bro, but very controlling, smartest guy in the room, even when he's not the smartest guy in the room. Yeah, him and Thomas Cockrell, like you said, have to be very worried about them being typecast as bad husbands and partners.
Yeah, I think so. Dakota Fanning played Jenny, and we all know her from a million billion different things. I think that she suited the role. I don't think that there was anything about Jenny that like I didn't see in her. Like, I didn't have like a completely different version of her than what Dakota looked like, sounded like, acted like. Did you know Sophia from anything? She is the one who played Carrie. Did you know her from anything?
I didn't. And her face was so particular to me.
She apparently has been in a lot of stuff as a kiddo, and so that's where her face is familiar. Michael Pena, however, you must recognize.
Oh, I did. I mean, before we were recording this, I was actually watching The Martian. So having just watched him in this, it's funny watching him in that. But, I think of him from like the Ant-Man movies more than anything else, where he's always being very funny and very jokey. And he had humor there. And I thought he was very good with Sam. I thought he was great.
He had the right mix of like, I can be a cop and be like serious, but also have that soft side to be the dad with Sam. I thought that he did a really good job with that, and really played it with like compassion but realism, like, worried and concerned. And the speech that he gives in episode 4 was great, about all of his worries, all the things that he as a parent worries about Sam. For me as a parent with 3 special needs kids, like, I felt like he was talking directly from my journal. Like, I mean, he very much told what the concerns are of parents with kids with any type of disabilities. And I think that they did a really great job in this show showing 2 different types of disabilities: a physical disability and then a disability that is more complex, and the more variety of disabilities involved with Sam. I think they did a beautiful job with that. And I know you're going to talk a little bit more about the showrunner and her intent, but I thought Michael Pena handled it very well. And that could have been clumsy, and I think that he did a really great job with that. The last one that I really want to point out, there's 2 actually I want to point out, is Abby Elliott as Leah. Now, that was a big surprise to me, because Leah was not nearly as big of a role in the book as she was in the show.
Maybe the smallest role in the book, honestly.
But then she was like almost like the last voice we heard of, like on the show, where she's like talking to the police and she's like, we're always willing to blame others, and like all that business, like pointing fingers and all that. That was kind of a poignant little speech that she gives at the end, and it came from her. So what a surprise.
I liked her in this because she really reminded me of her Bear character. Her Leah in this could easily be Sugar, if Sugar developed like a drug habit in the Bear. Like, and I think that's just Abby Elliott-ness coming through. I think she's just one of those people who, again, kind of like Michael Pena, can do jokes and sweet, but then also be serious. There's a serious side there too, or like an edge there too, that she can like turn to. there was some nuance. There was more nuance to her for a character like that we talked about is very invisible or very minor in the book. She did some whole cloth making up of a character here.
Yeah. The other actor that I want to point out is Daniel Monks, and he plays Brian, the brother. And this was a very different character than the Brian that we had in the book. The one in the book just kind of felt like a hanger-on, kind of like just this sort of like, I don't know, like a entitled brother who just didn't really have much to do. He just kind of hung out on the property. This version of him in the show had much more gravitas, I thought. I mean, he had a reason to be there. There was a purpose. He, as an actor, also happens to have a disability. So he was playing a very authentic role for himself. He's been in quite a few different things. I know that they also had a disability coordinator on the set, that they both like really gave Megan a lot of notes about how to make sure that everything was handled properly from the disabled community's point of view. And I think that they did a really great job. As a mom, I felt really good. There was parts like when Daniel is talking about, and Daniel's Brian, when Brian is talking about, like, I love my chair and my chair is my freedom, and you're looking at it like it's a negative and I'm looking at it like it's a positive. I can see that. Like I can see where I've seen other parents or I've seen other people in general push for kids with special needs to act a certain way or look a certain way because it's more comfortable to that person and not to the actual person who has the special need of some sort. Like they want to be in the wheelchair or they prefer to be more comfortable or whatever, but for whatever reason, their parent doesn't want to have that particular whatever optics about their family. And so they push against it and they don't want to look a certain way. So I thought they did an awesome job of like directly addressing that and saying like, no, look at me and I love my chair and this is great and this is who I am. It gave one more strike against Peter in that he was like such an ableist. It was like painful.
I was proud of Brian for finally sticking up, but it required him learning that Peter had lied to him about being a candidate for the surgery. But Oof. Like finally coming through and this idea of, because Leah keeps asking him, like, why aren't you using your chair? Like, using the crutch, like, literally, I see you, you're in pain. But it's Peter who's driving that because of the look, the optics of
again.
It.
Yeah.
But it's also, but it's beyond optics, though. It's because in the crutch, he's in pain and has to rely on Peter. In the chair, he says, when he's drunk, he's like, this is freedom, baby. He's like, I can go anywhere in this thing and I don't feel in pain. But like, I could just literally wheel out of here. Like, and he does drunkenly, but like, you know, it's just the chair is freedom that Peter can't allow him to have because he has that need to control, which is sick.
Well, he wants to keep him like a little off kilter because if he has to take the pain medications, then he can't be like, you know, as on point. And, you know, that's part of it is keeping everybody sort of submissive to him, which is painful and ugly. It's a very ugly side of Peter, that the storyline and everything between his siblings, which is new to this show. That was awful. Everything that he did. And I understand he was a child. But at the same time, like to never correct it, to never go back and be like, this happened and I know that when I was little, I said this, but I realized looking back, that's not really what happened. And, you know, I need to come clean with everyone. Like that's unforgivable. Like, because he changed the course of Leah's entire personality and growth and everything. Like she was never going to be sane so much as she thought she had hurt Brian like that.
It's because of what he says to Leah that Leah ends up not ratting out Marissa. Maybe there's more contributing there, but the final conversation from the wake before he kisses Marissa and gets the soy allergy is, it's your fault Colin's dead.
I couldn't believe that. That was so insane.
Like, he said there, he's like, look where we are, Leah, because of how you behaved.
Because of your relationship.
Your addictions, your relationship. Ugly. Right. Because Colin is a gambling addict, right?
My head was like on a swivel when he said that. I was like, what? Like, I cannot believe that he's going to turn it and blame. Again, the whole thing was happening. Colin was dead because of Peter. Colin, you know, all these people, Caroline was dead because of Peter. Like, everything that was happening was because of Peter. And it was like wild how quick he was to be like, and this was you, Marissa, and this was you, Leah, and let me hand out the guilt to everybody. Like, oh my God. And yours, Jenny, here's your package of guilt.
The only other character I wanted to mention was Jay Ellis as Colin Dobbs, just because he's the other major character in the book, but mainly because Jay Ellis is going to be a name you all hear. Right before we're recording this, it was just announced he is going to lead the spin-off of The Rookie. The Nathan Fillion long-running show The Rookie just announced a spin-off called The Rookie: North, and Jay Ellis is going to be the lead of it. So
cool, very nice.
Timely for Jay to be doing this show so that he gets his other show. All right, so that's cast. Let's talk about the setting. They moved the show from the expensive, affluent suburbs of Dublin to Chicago. Why? Why do you think?
I have a rough time when it comes to really heavy accents. And, if they were over in Ireland, I could see where perhaps the accent might be a little bit difficult for some American watchers.
I think keeping it in Ireland and keeping it in Dublin, the fact that they have guards, right? They don't have cops. They don't have police, right? They have the guards. Don't call the guards. I think it's more country and it's more rural the way the story is told, and I think that's why the police procedural part of it is not a big aspect of the book. The showrunner here wanted to expand that aspect of it and show how would a missing child police investigation proceed. So moving it to America, where everyone understands the idea of police procedural, it's a very popular genre. If you've watched TV in, say, I don't know, the last 30 years, the police procedural draws people to it. People do like trying to figure out a story in that way. And also putting in Chicago, I think, just makes it accessible to Americans. The story beats resonate. Like I said earlier, I think I was quoting Megan Gallagher when she said, the stress of working mothers and childcare and the work-life balance, that's international. You don't need to be in Ireland or in America or wherever to understand that theme. That's kind of a universal theme. So moving it to Chicago just kind of takes away some barriers that people would have to getting into what the show is about versus focusing on peripheral things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that all totally makes sense to me. And I think that, like you said, the themes are universal anyway. So, they could have picked anywhere. And it's interesting when you said the childcare part, we were talking about the representation of people with disabilities. And I thought it was really beautiful that when they were talking about childcare generally, I don't know if you personally made the overarching leap, but every time they were talking about a minder, we're also talking about St. Mark's. And we're also talking about who's going to mind Sam, right? And so it's look at all the hoops that this family has to go through who has a child with special needs, as opposed to you guys just hire the next person that the agency sends along or whatever. There's this really cool, I think, juxtaposition between those two of showing yeah, everybody has childcare needs, but we're not all on the same, starting point of where it is or what's available out there. There's one spot at St. Mark's, one, and that's it. Those types of things I think was awesome to show that, including people and families that are not just typical mainstream families.
I wanted to give the quotes because I was looking for when you were talking earlier about the character of Brian, and I just found it now. So can I want to give, because this is what Megan Gallagher was talking about for why she introduced the Brian with the spinal injury and then the Sam character, Detective Alcaraz's son, and his disability. She said about Brian during an interview given to The Wrap, I really wanted to get a disability storyline on the screen that would be meaningful to the disabled community. She noted that on-screen plot for characters with disabilities often involved the concept of perseverance. This is her quoting now. As it was explained to me, that's quite offensive, she said. So being able to put a storyline on the screen that was about saying, yeah, I'm disabled and this is what I need and get over it is so much more powerful.
Yes. And I had read another interview with her where she was basically saying most stories are the story of triumph, overcoming your disability.
He stands up from the chair and breaks free from the crutch. And that's,
right. And the idea that no, the success is for him to say, I love my chair and I am successful in my chair. And this is all I need to be successful. I don't need to be taller. I don't need to be with a crutch. I don't need to be standing. I can be sitting and be equally worthy as you are, Peter. that was a really awesome message to get in there. And I don't think it detracted from the story at all. I think for me, the way that Peter handled everything with Brian's accident and then subsequent disability told me so much about Peter. He's one of those people who, you're right, like try to keep the person down. They don't want them to grow and change because they're comfortable in their role with their person. They are comfortable with the dynamic.
Them. They've made it about them.
Yeah,
versus
and
the
Peter
person.
100%, my God, made it about him.
It's
my
all
God.
about him.
Like, that was crazy how much he made Brian about him. And I loved it that Brian, again, just directly addressed that and said, believe it or not, this isn't about you, you know, and it has nothing to do with you, Peter. And I was like, yes, thank you for saying that. And again, going back to that conversation that the detective had with Marissa, where he's like listing off his worries, like, you know, what if he's having symptoms of cancer and he can't tell us and then we find it too late? These are things that rack my brain at night. You know, these are the things that give you the gray hair and the wrinkles, because it's like, how do you solve problems that feel unsolvable? To have the detective be kind of dealing with this in watching Peter, Sam, and having that character gave the detective, I think, different eyes on Peter when it came to Brian. And I think all of that matters because all of it plays into giving a lot more color and context and texture to these characters.
I think going back to that conversation in episode 4, for me...
Which, you guys, if you don't know, is about minute 35 on episode 4, where the detective is talking about Sam.
It's right after Marissa, they go outside on like her patio and she asks for a picture of his son. And he hesitates and then shows him and that's the conversation that they go into, because she asks him, do you worry about your kid? Because obviously she's worried about her kid. And he says, yeah, of course. I don't corner the market about worrying about my kid. And she calls him on it. She says, that's a rehearsed answer. You're like, you don't have to tell me, but it's more than what you're saying. I obviously can tell that. And so then he opens up to her. And so the conversation, what you're pointing out is something that I think is important for people to hear about what happens when my wife and I are gone. You know, who's going to take care of them? And what if he can't tell us his symptoms until it's too late? But then there's another aspect of it too. There's a part of it, I think he said that he feels guilty because he doesn't know if Sam would like who he was if Sam didn't have his disability. And he worries about that. And this is a guy who has taken a bribe so that Sam could get into the school he wants to. So now he's having his own guilt and his own, you know, consternation about who I am. What am I willing to sacrifice for my son to get ahead and have what he needs? But I was reading the quote from Megan Gallagher about why she added the Sam and Detective Alcaraz story. And she said that it came from her own life because she has a child who has autism. And this is her quote. She goes, Michael did a really, really great job of encapsulating the feeling of isolation. You are on a lonely island. It might be an island full of tons and tons and tons of love, but it is a little lonely. Reading that quote after watching that scene really connected to me. Like, I feel like more than any other thing, and maybe understand why he does eventually shove the evidence and take care of it so that Sam could get into the school. But that conversation, the end of that conversation, talking to Marissa, I think you're on a lonely island. It might be an island full of tons and tons of love, but it is a little lonely, really comes through in that conversation. Like, her reasoning showed up on the screen there for me when I was thinking back on it. Because we're talking about Detective Alcaraz, let's talk about I think one of the most major changes to the story in the show versus the book is the tone shift, but also the POV shift, the point of view shift. The book, you are getting Marissa's point of view, obviously, but you're getting a lot of Jenny and a lot of Irene as Carrie's mother, filling in a lot of context and story. Irene is basically invisible, and you don't get a lot of Jenny POV here. Most of Jenny's scenes are really still coming from Marissa's point of view. It happens to be in the scene with her. I think the show very much is being told almost exclusively from Marissa's point of view, but if there is a secondary character, I think it's Detective Alcaraz's story. I mean, there's an episode devoted basically to his personal life. And so you understand his motivations and his context, and also his thinking when he's working through the case with his other detective and the rest of the police force. Did that perspective change work for you? Did you feel like you lost something that the book had that you missed watching the TV show? Or was it, like we were saying, it's kind of different, but as good? It just, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was as good. Like, so I know you said that you preferred the book over the show. I think that they are equally good, but I do think it's like two different people telling you a story with two different styles. And so I kind of feel like, you know, if you ask two different people to tell you exactly the same story, I feel like they would emphasize different parts. They might bring in other characters. They might have seen something the other person didn't see, whatever. And so I kind of felt, that's how I kind of felt in comparing the two, the way that the story unfolded in both. I really felt like the story was as impactful from the book to the show, which is very difficult to do. I mean, this is the first time we've done this a couple times now. Mm-hmm. This is the first time where I felt like they were equally good, and that the casting, as star-studded as the casting was, did not bother me, did not bother like how I thought of the characters in any way, which it was wow. Maybe it's because of the echelon of these actors. Like, they're definitely people we know and have seen, but they're not like the A++++++, like that where you can't see their character, all you can do is see them. Right. You know, like if you bring in Helen Mirren, I'm sorry, I can only see Helen Mirren. I cannot pretend she's somebody else. So no, I wasn't missing the POVs. I wasn't missing, you know, that we had to say each person, because I think that they did a good job of showing us those POVs. You know, like they brought the camera around, that we were in the motel, we were in Jenny's house, we were in the cars, we were everywhere. So we were getting the points of view. It just wasn't maybe as explicit, like this is this person's point of view, this is now this person's point of view. It's just the camera would just shift.
Well, and I think, listen, I mean, we've given a couple quotes now from the showrunner. I think if you don't change Brian's story and his origin story and his relationship, and if you don't introduce the detective story. Now, I don't know that you needed to gender swap the detective. I think you could have had Detective McConnell be a woman still and have a son with a disability. But okay, you know, gender swapping is not uncommon, you know, in today's world.
But I think it's kind of unusual to change a woman to a man. I think that is kind of unusual in this day and age.
That's true. But the idea of swapping the gender just to do a change, right? It's like when you change someone's name in the story, like, well, why? You didn't have to change the name.
Right. Josephine.
Right. Like, why Josephine instead of Caroline, which made me laugh.
Well, of course it made me laugh. I was like, oh man, I'm like a kidnapper lady.
You know, but if you don't introduce the detective story, but you still want to tell Sam's story, well, you got to put that somewhere. So you have to change the POV and you have to learn enough about the detective so you can get to the Sam story. And if you want to show Brian's disability and that story, well, then you need to change something, right? So you needed to make kind of these high level changes in how you're telling the story in order to get the things you want to add into it.
And particularly Brian, let's talk about how that lie is what makes, I think, the Milo lie happen. He has already lived with a lie since he was 10 years old. Mm-hmm. A life-changing, life-altering incident created a lie that he lived by all these decades now and didn't, you know, in any way crack with his siblings or anything. And in fact, used it as if like it was like, you know, reasons for us to look down on Leah and reasons for us to, you know, try to control Brian and all of these things.
Like, you can't be trusted. He's essentially saying Leah can't be trusted, not because she has developed a drug addiction, but because of what she did when she was 4 or 6. Because she acted like she was the tiniest of child, like the same age that your missing son is now. You're holding her accountable as an adult, you know.
You had to know, though, that he was capable of a lie that big. That he was capable of saying something that would alter all these other people's lives and be totally fine with it. People he loved the most, and he was totally fine with letting that lie stand out there. That's all super important to understanding Peter's character and making it believable that he could have done what he did.
It's psychotic. I mean, is it sociopathic? Is that what it is? I think it's one of the DSM, or narcissistic. It's one of the DSM clarifications, but to be able to hold on to such a life-altering lie, use it as a way of controlling your siblings and also be otherwise perfectly normal and functioning and successful and high-functioning is really fucked up. So, of course, he's someone who could, in the moment, think to switch the babies. he didn't just switch the babies. It wasn't that they just found him holding Carrie's kid, who they just assumed was Milo. He switches the car carriers. Like, he like literally put the...
Well, I think he didn't switch the car carriers. He switched the babies.
I think the baby's in the car. The baby's in the car.
No.
Oh, no, sorry. He does put the baby.
His
He does
own
babies. Yes,
baby.
Yes,
he
you're
unbuckled
right.
his own dead baby and put it in the other woman's car
Right.
seat.
It had to be
That's
right because
bigger and grosser
he
than
handled
what you think.
Passed away baby. Oh, it's
Yeah.
so fucked up.
That's
It's really
way
sick.
more.
It's really
Yeah.
sick. It's really, really sick.
And also, he felt no love. You're a father. I know that baby was only 4 days old, but you abandoned your dead child in that car. Like,
Yeah.
you didn't bury your baby or anything. You know what I mean? Like, that was your baby.
Right. You just
But
let it
again,
toss it
just
away.
showing everything about Peter, just showing everything you need to know about how cold he is and what he can do.
There's a lot here that changed, and I think most of it we don't have to mention. It's not that we don't know or don't realize. Yes, there's no Frank, Irene's new husband. There's a lot less Sarah and the other moms and that one dad. There's no Leah's not with Colin. Leah's with Colin.
Well, okay. I thought this part was weird. That was a big part that Carrie was with Colin. That was a big part about all the stuff at the office and all the evidence that Peter found. So that was actually a gigantic change. I mean, I know they needed to have like Leah be tied in more because she really had nothing to do for most of the show except for be Colin's girlfriend.
When you decided to have Leah be the scapegoat sister, then you need to give her a bigger role. And if you give her a bigger role, then you tie her into Colin. The change didn't really bother me because I didn't really care about the change one way or another. I think Colin stealing funds was the main thing. And that larger beat still.
Carrie's 22. How old do you think Colin is? 40-something? 50-something? Him sleeping with her in their offices on the desk is very different than dating Leah, who is his age-appropriate adult person who he's known for a long time. You know, like they're showing two very different Collins.
Yeah,
when they're showing
true.
him like cuddling in bed with Leah, that is not sweeping a desk and having sex with a 22-year-old. That is very different.
I never thought about the age difference when I was reading the book.
So he's like a lech, dude. And like, there's more to that. Like, that makes you feel like Colin is so much like slimier to me.
I think they hint that he's kind of slimy because
not in the show as much. Yes,
no,
financially.
in the book.
But
in the book, because even once they established that he and Marissa did date a long time ago, and he did date Leah a long time ago. Maybe it was just one date, they say, but it was still a date. All of his interaction with Marissa all of a sudden becomes very like, you're too handsy, dude. Like, you're hugging her and like you're touching her too much and you're there too much. And like, yes, Peter is not a good guy, but also like, I don't know, feels like you're crossing lines then, you know, as soon as, and also, but at the same time, a little bit like Brian in a book, is like so subservient to Marissa and Peter in a way.
Yeah, they're just like there.
Like they're like born again virgins. Like they're not allowed to have any kind of romance where he has to like go sneak off to a club with this girl that he met at a bar, which clearly he was like set up to do, right? I mean, he was just clueless. I mean, I think Peter calls him either clueless or like a clown throughout the book, something like that. Like, but he thinks it's an act. So Peter never really liked Colin because he always assumed it was just like an act that he was putting on. Maybe it is an act. Like, I mean, he was pulling off high financial crimes, so clearly wasn't stupid. So if he's not stupid, then he's got to be gross.
I think he is gross. Yeah, I think so. Being who he was and doing all the other things he was doing, I think it just painted a picture of a guy who was making really bad decisions. That's what you mainly needed to know.
I mean, the Carrie stuff aside, which is an excellent point with the age difference, but like,
and having sex at the office and letting her print her resume off the printer and all the things, you know, like Carrie is the linchpin of a shitload of activities he did that were not cool.
as his partner, this woman who, knowing like his troubles, goes into business with him and establishes this law firm with him. And at her lowest moment is presenting himself like this, I'll take care of the audit. Give me those files. I have those, you have those files. Like, I need those files. I'll take care of all of it for you. But it wasn't honorable, though. He was hiding. He was taking the lowest moment to take advantage of her at her lowest moment so he could continue hiding his bullshit.
Yeah, that's insane. That's insane
really,
to me.
That really turned me off then. That was the thing I was focused again, because I was so put off. Again, I cannot stress to you enough. You cannot steal your client's money.
That's very funny. All right. So also, we didn't have a romance plot line for Brian and May. That was like a little throwaway. That was from the book. That was like really small and short at the very end.
Most of the murders play out differently in the TV show than the book. You explicitly see Rob kill Kyle, which they hint at, but they never actually say who did kill Kyle in the book and dismembered him. But it makes sense that it would have been Rob. Here you see him explicitly shoot him in the back of the head when they're looking for Mr. Chips. And then obviously he tosses him into the water. But the other murders all play out differently, right? So Carrie gets smothered in the book. Here, she gets killed, quote unquote, accidentally when her and Peter are wrestling for the gun. Carrie kills Colin accidentally shoots him when there's a scuffle for the gun. In the book, obviously, Peter sets it up for Colin and Rob to get into a gunfight and kill each other. And then instead of the 6 months later seafood allergy murder of Marissa of Peter, here she puts soy on her lips, which he has a soy allergy instead of a seafood allergy, and he dies that way at the wake. That's the one I want to talk about because I like the book version better because I like the fact that she bided her time. You know, so I like that she let it die down. That felt more realistic. If you were going to do this, I like the fact that she did, because the eyes would have been off of her. They were on vacation in Spain. She didn't take Milo with. Like, it felt more like just desserts for Peter because his guard would have just been down and no eyes would have been on. It would have just been like a couple of lines in the story, just like we saw in the book. And no one's going to be paying attention. Here, obviously, there's going to be so many eyes on it. You're at a wake for another dead guy who was killed in your house, and then he dies. Like, you have to keep the police involved then at the story. Though I found this effective, but I think if I'm comparing the two versions, I think I like the book version better. What did you think of the murders overall, the way they changed it, the way they played it out?
I mean, they made me pause on some of them and be like, okay, who killed who in the book in this one? Because I was surprised that all of them changed. Like, I didn't think like all of them needed to change. So that kind of surprised me because, you know, like I said, I had to keep double checking with myself about like, well, what did I read? What was it? What was it there? The soy thing I thought was interesting because soy is so much more difficult to cut out of your food. I mean, soy, I have 2 members of my household that are allergic to soy. Seafood is so much easier to avoid. Soy is really hard to avoid. It's in everything from chewing gum to condiments to, you know, just regular meat. If you just buy regular meat, which you think is just regular raw meat, no, there's probably soy additives and filler in it. So it's super hard. So that actually made it seem super realistic. When she says to him in the show, I've managed your allergies this whole time, I was like, oh my God. It was like the best final words to him. It was like basically like, had you just taken care of yourself, you fucking man-child, you would have had what you needed on you. But because of you constantly being incompetent, you can't even take care of your own allergy that you've had your whole life. Now you die. And it's like, oh my God. I can tell you there are a lot of women who are going to take a lot of satisfaction in that man's death and that last line, because that was like juicy biz. So I appreciated the change there because I liked seeing it and I liked her saying what she said, because we were just told about it in the book. We were just told that there was an incident. I really enjoyed watching it play out. I'm glad we got to see Peter die.
Me too. And I liked the dawning realization as his throat was closing, because that was the just desserts, was when she says that, and then it all hits him and he can't believe it. So I like that. What I didn't like about it was that it kept the cop in there. I like in the book, she gets away with it and the cops aren't sniffing around her. Here, we have to live with the fact that she didn't really get away with it. She's getting away with it because the detective is allowing her to get away with it.
There's no way to prove that her eyes went across the label. And you know what? Let's get real. She just had her child kidnapped and returned. She just had 2 people murdered in her home. And she is at her business partner who embezzled from her funeral. Maybe she didn't read the label that great, you know? And guess what? It's not like she spoon-fed it to him. Let's really think about this. She didn't sit there and like spoon-feed, poison to him. She kissed him later, right? Which most of us would think that wouldn't be enough. But that's like the trick of it, because it's like such a subtle way to do this that I don't think it is provable. She could admit, yes, I may have had some soy. I had no idea I had on my lips. I had no idea that it could transfer between us like that. I had she could have said a million things and still admitted that yeah, I ate it and yeah, I kissed him, but I in no way was trying to cause his death. That's crazy.
The final scene when he comes to the house and sits down and then he lays out, you managed all of this. You managed all of Peter's life. You managed all of this household. You keep all of this together. But I get it. And the case is closed. And I'm good with that.
He says that about Milo, not about killing Peter.
No, it's about Peter. Because he called.
No. Are you talking about in the living room?
Yeah, the very final scene is
Then that's about synesthesia. You're talking about a different scene.
No. I'm talking about that where it's about the synesthesia, but he wraps back around to her. But Peter is dead now, and the case is closed. I'm not going to do anything. There's an implication that he knows that she killed Peter.
Oh, I thought the implication was totally about Milo and not about that.
No, because I think he genuinely believes that she didn't know. And he says, I don't think you knew anything about it. I think Peter did all of the baby switching, and you found out literally as we're talking about it. You found out at the same time I found out. I think there's an implication there, though. And now I want to go back and watch it,
But he says to her that he's saying you didn't know about it. You didn't know about what? Milo's kidnapping, switch. The baby, right. Yeah. You're saying that he's also implying the soy allergy thing, and I'm saying, no, that wasn't a part of that conversation.
I think it is.
Yes,
I want to go back and watch it, because I think he does.
When he says the case is closed, I think he means Milo.
He does, but I think he also means that they're not going to do anything with her death. I want to go back and watch it, because I took it very much as all of it was Peter's dead now, so there's nothing further to look into this, and
Peter did it, because Peter switched the babies.
It's the way he says, and I'm good with that, because it's kind of like a self-cleaning oven, that there's nothing to further look at about Peter. Like, had Peter not died, maybe that conversation is, well, you still have trouble, then I'm going to have to look into here. He knows that I killed Peter. I know I did it. You know I did it. Everyone's just kind of winking and whatever. Okay. And I like her getting away with it more cleanly in the book. I do like the satisfaction of getting to see his eyes bulge as he dies.
I'm happy we got to see it.
But I wanted that to be the end of it, though. I don't want to see the police wrap up where she has to worry like she did something wrong, because she didn't. She did what she had to do to protect herself and Milo, because how could she ever? She says to Jenny, "How can I stay with him? How can I don't know what if he's done all of this." I can never sleep soundly again.
See, that's interesting, because I took the police closure to be the actual closure of the whole thing, meaning she never has to worry. That's what he was telling her. You never have to worry. I'm never coming after you for Milo. Milo is going to stay here with you, even though I know he's not your biological child. I'm never going to come after you. And I thought that was the closure. That's where all the moms in the world get to exhale and say, we're never going to come after you for your child.
Yes, that is what he says. But I'm saying, the way I took it, though, secrets only.
I understand what you're saying. But
secrets between two people only remain secrets if one of them is dead. As long as he knows what she did, it's never really yes, her immediate problem is there. If I'm her, I'm always a little worried about it. I didn't like that there was winking in there that
I took it as real closure.
but I'm cool with it though, because he deserved to be killed, and who am I? I hid evidence to get my kid into a school. Like, we're all good.
Okay.
Like, let's move on. I don't know. There was an uneasiness about it, and I wanted her to get fully away with it. And she did get away with it, but like, I wanted there to be no overhang, and it left me with this feeling of back in my brain unease, I guess.
See, and I guess why I'm rejecting this is because that undercuts Leah's entire conversation with the police when she's like, you're always looking for someone to blame and blah, 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 and all that. And she said, no, I did not see Marissa look at the words on the thing. Like, she's the one, like, it's woman power in that situation. So that's why it's killing me that you're coming back with the police and saying, no, the police is acting haughty and saying they know. But I'm saying Leah shut it down like woman to woman, like kept the bond going, didn't tattle. And I think that's important.
She did, but then the two cops look at each other and they're just like, well, we can't prosecute it, because they would have needed her to say something in order to prosecute it. They didn't believe Leah. There was nothing there that they didn't believe her. They know she did it.
You wanted them to just straight believe her and like they got away with it like that, not like they don't have any way to prosecute?
I didn't want there to be any investigation to it. I wanted it just to be just an accidental death.
Well, but I don't know if that's realistic. Like, I think in this group with how many deaths they had, how do they justify not investigating when this would be the third or fourth, no, seventh death
something like that,
within this group of people? Like, there's no way, like, there couldn't be where she gets off scot-free. There has to be a moment where it's like, wink, we're not going to prosecute you. Like, we understand that you are just as much a victim, and as is Milo, of what Peter did, as are so many of these people that are involved. They're all victims of what Peter's choices were. So I don't want to just be like, oh, they just kind of winked and let them off. Like, I want to think, no, that was a pretty smart way to do it. And she did get away with it, because they couldn't prosecute her. And I think, I don't know, maybe I'm making a different line. Maybe you're making a line of you don't even want them to know that she did it. And I'm saying it's good enough that they can't prosecute her, that she did it well enough and clever enough that they couldn't do anything to her, that's just as good as them not knowing.
In the world of options presented to us, it is the best way. I'm just saying, I like the way the book handles it better because of that.
That's totally fair.
Because the cops aren't involved at all. And then that's a fundamental difference, though, between the TV show and the book. The cops in the book they're there at the most minimal level, really just to convey information.
So that's something that I want to talk with you about. Okay, I have to talk about this because I am so confused about this. And this is something that you guys, if anyone out there is a part of law enforcement, I really need to understand this better. So in every TV show, book, movie I've ever seen, experienced, where there is a kidnapping, there is always this moment, or really even anyone lost, right? Just missing, a missing person in general. There's always this like big convening, like on the big house, like wherever the person lived, they all go to that house or the parents' house, whatever the biggest house is, it seems. And they're like making posters and making phone calls. And there's all this canvassing and a lot of hubbub is always going on. Like one of the like sort of like blinks in my head is Ben Affleck when he's smoking outside in the Gone Girl clip that people use all the time for like gifts and stuff, where he's like smoking and he's like holding his head and stuff. And it's like, there's like paparazzi and there's like shit outside because in the show, his wife is missing. And there's like all these people always humming around the house and all this busy like police people and all this stuff. It is wild to me how quiet their house was, that it was only 5 or 6 people that really were like in on the investigation for this at all. Like, I know we had one episode of one time where there was like a canvassing. We didn't even really see it. They just told us about what happened about it. We saw little bits and pieces, like a little montage you kind of feel to it, but not really. I don't know. I'm curious, you guys. I'm curious if it's more realistic that a house would be so quiet and the cops would just come visit you every once in a while, talk to you maybe at the end of the day, give you an update, and that's it. Maybe that's super realistic. Or is it the thing that I've seen come out of Hollywood all my life, which is like, there's a big hubbub when someone goes missing and we get these search parties. And here in Texas, we use EquiSearch and the horses and we do all these things that the Cajun Navy helps out. Like everybody's a part of it. Like, I don't know. So I'm curious. So listeners, if any of you guys know, I hope no one has experienced a kidnapping or a missing person. But if anyone has any knowledge of real life, what really happens, and does anyone come afterwards, like a social worker or something that helps that kid? Because I thought Milo went back to school way too fast. And that seemed insane how quick everyone went back to their regular routines. So I had a lot of questions within the book. The book, rushing to that routine and then having Milo act the way he did at school and people being like, well, that's weird. Like, maybe he shouldn't have come back so soon. I was like, he shouldn't have come back so soon. That was friggin' weird that he came back so soon. I'm really curious about that. I'm really curious about what is the protocol around the people who are looking for this person who's missing. What happens to those people? Are police with them all the time? Does a police car stay at the house all the time? I couldn't believe there wasn't a police presence outside the house the entire time Milo was gone.
Yeah, I think the book explains that it's a gated community, so maybe that explains it there. But in the Chicago, suburb setting, I agree with you that it feels like, I mean, because we see Detective Alcaraz
was still out there,
right, and we see him mobilizing police to go here or there in the TV show. So it is odd that there wouldn't be a stationary police presence, especially when Milo was back and
Milo's back and she's still missing. Yeah, that part seemed like, what in the world? I don't know. So I was curious about that. I didn't think I don't want to make a judgment about which is more realistic because I don't know the answer. I don't know what really happens when someone goes missing. So that's curiosity for me. One of the things that I thought was an odd change in the book was changing Milo's age. Why do you think that they did that?
I don't know, because the boy who played him was 4 when they filmed it.
And I thought 4 was actually a way better age because it seemed like it was he's such a baby. Like, you could be such a baby at 4. Like, you could forget your mom if you were 4.
Right, but enough conversation so you could do things like Monday's yellow, it tastes like yellow, like that, but like, I feel like at 5, and he turned 6 in the TV show, right? Because the birthday is the day where like they have the meltdown because the cake gets thrown to the floor and stuff when all the information comes out with Peter and the accident when they were kids.
When the way that they had that cake box and the way that it opened in the show and how it opened, and then she closes it like a fucking coffin and says, "Happy birthday, sweetheart," and closes it. Oh, you guys, I said that my heart was not like bleeding throughout this whole thing. That scene, I was like, oh my, watching her hands close that box on the little dino in there. Oh my God, that was heart-wrenching.
Mr. Chips.
Mr. Chips, so cute.
Yeah, but I think a 5-6-year-old is too verbal and remembers too much. I think you needed him to be 4 to better convey bits and pieces of the story.
I also think that it's better for Carrie to have been like 18 too when she had the baby, and now that she's 22 and whatever we are, somewhere on there. Like, that is a different story than a 16-year-old. And it was sadder that it was a baby. Like, it seemed like he was littler.
Also, that her mom made her pay off that debt for all the stuff she ran up on the credit card for over 5 years. Because there's a flash forward of 5 years later. And she tells her dad in the bar, she was like, I paid mom off last month.
Yes. That's all of that. All Irene. Ugh.
Irene.
Yeah. And then what a weird moment when talking about payoffs. What a weird moment when Carrie is out at the vacation house thing and they're talking about, like, can she pay off Colin's debt? That was so weird. And her dad's like, why would you do that to a stranger?
Oh, that was weird.
I don't know why. And I still don't get it. It would have made more sense had she been dating Colin. But since they took that out, I was like,
maybe just sympathy building that, like,
I guess that she really did have a good heart and like she was a good person, but just this was terrible circumstances that kind of made her lose it, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I mean, I think when she choked out Irene, that was like when she was like, I'm not Josephine anymore, like I'm Carrie. That was like the break of sanity for me.
Which actually which I didn't understand necessarily when she was doing it, other than maybe being an emo teen who's, grieving the loss of their child, where she deletes all of her posts and then just puts up a black square like in memory of Josephine Murphy. Because then later on, Peter says, we were told she was dead.
Yeah.
Well, were you told she was dead, or did you find her social media and see that there was a post saying she was dead? Because she literally faked her own death that way.
Which is funny. Look, you could just put a black square up on social media, and apparently that's probably good enough. That's so weird in this day and age that you could probably just post like a funeral posting or like a celebration of life on your Facebook and just go away. And probably that'd be enough for like 90% of your community to believe you were gone.
Friends did this with a plot line where he does it on like an early like friend serve list for their alumni, and he because he wants to go to his own like funeral to hear what people say about him. Oh, Ross, you're so desperate for attention. But then he sees like a beautiful woman saying sweet things, and he pops in. He's like, "I'm alive," and then she's grossed out that he would fake his own.
Spoiler alert! If y'all haven't watched Friends.
Yeah, sorry. Wow.
Anyway, okay, so is there any other things that you want to point out or anything you want to like wind up in terms of like, what did you think? Like, we always ask, like, would you choose book or movie for one? Are we choosing book or are we choosing movie?
This is the first time we're doing this where I'm saying do both, because I think you can really enjoy both independent of the other. One does not spoil the other. One doesn't really inform the other. It doesn't you don't need to do one to handhold yourself to get through the other. I think you can enjoy both of these stories and come away with different things. I think you pick up things in the show with the disability storylines and the motivations. I think the book does a better job at the female friendship stories, which is in the show, but I think it's much more about how women treat each other and women relationships, and also the stress of the working mother and stuff like that, I think is hammered home much more in the book. So it's good for that. So I think you can get a lot out of both of these. I'm recommending both of them.
I love that. I would do the same. This is the first time for that. And I definitely really enjoyed the book and was surprised at how I could watch the show completely separately and not feel spoiled, because I didn't know how the story was going to be revealed. I didn't know how they were going to pace it. I didn't know who was going to do what. And then once they started to kind of change the characters, and like we said, everybody's death was different and all those things, they changed enough to where it's like, yeah, I mean, it was the same basic story, but there was enough change that like you really enjoyed it on a whole different level for all different reasons. I enjoyed it.
Right. There was no part as soon as you realized how they were changing things, you really couldn't be like, oh, and now he's going to go smother her with a pillow.
Yeah, you couldn't guess.
You couldn't guess because it was all different. Like that scene where she comes in and with a gun, like I was like, oh, we're doing this now. This is happening now.
Like I had other people watching the show with me who didn't read the book. And at certain points they would be like, did this happen in the book? And I'd be like, I can't honestly tell you what's going to happen next because this didn't happen in the book. They weren't in a motel, or whatever, like, I don't know where we're going with this now, like, and that's great because that means we really did enjoy the story in two different formats in completely different ways. And I think that's kind of the point of this whole podcast, right?
I think so. I think that's a great place to end it.
I do too. I mean, I think, listen, if you are a woman fed up with what's going on in your world, I think that there's going to be a lot of things in this story that speak to you. I don't know. As a man, do you ever feel weird when the men are made to be like how we're saying they're douchebags or weaponized incompetence? Like, do you feel like, is that like hurting you as well when we say that?
No, because I think it lines up with exactly how I feel about most husbands. This is
you're judgy of husbands.
I'm the most judgy of husbands.
Oh my God, tell everything.
They are, as a class, just generally useless. Like I really, really down on the modern day
You're
husband.
Down. Okay. Do you have any tips or tricks for any man who's listening out there who's like, well, I'd like to be a husband that you don't think is horrible?
I mean, if you're listening to this, you're probably not the problem.
Okay.
If you're listening to you and me talk for 2+ hours about all her faults on the Book Club podcast, if you're doing book club with or without your partner, you're probably okay. is probably the guess. But no, I think it's the...
All right, but no tips or tricks, nothing?
You don't have to control it. She's your partner, not your employee. Communication and partnership, those two things will get you so far. I think we see that in the books that we have read, in just the 4 books now that we've read and shows that we've watched. If the husbands and the relationships spoke to each other, and communicated with each other and didn't try to keep everything a goddamn secret for whatever their dumb motivation is. And your motivation, by the way, is always wrong. It's wrong. Whatever you think you're justified keeping the big secret from your partner, you're wrong. It will bite you in the ass and no one will think you were a good person for doing it. Just talk about your shit. Like, the day is so long. Find time to air your shit because you had a kid too. Like, with the parenting thing, like the school teacher who gets out at the same time as their kid and refuses to do anything. It's one of the benefits of being a school teacher. It is a thankless job largely, except for the hours are pretty fucking good. Go get your
eating
kid.
Chips in the parking lot really.
It was the chips while laughing obnoxiously at watching reels on his phone, so like bad. He was some 12-year-old.
No, it was bad. It was really bad. It was really bad.
I wanted him to push the car into the ocean.
Women, I've got no tips and tricks. I'm out here drowning right with you and doing my very best all the time to keep on top of 3 kids and my own job here and all the other things that I do. And so I have no tips and tricks for you other than I agree with Mike. You got to communicate. Like, that's all you can do is talk and try and set boundaries, people. Set boundaries. Probably don't kill anybody. That'd be a good idea.
Yeah, and husbands, keep your fucking mother-in-law, your mothers, away from your wives.
Oh my God.
That is universal in almost every way.
That was so insane.
What is it? It's the Milady joke. Is he talks about his mom, right? He goes, "I want you to ask Grandma what she thinks." No, he says to the audience, he's like, "Go ask your mom about what you think about how your dad's mom raised him." Like, watch that bit. It is hysterical and 1,000% correct. Adeline could go burn in the hell that she deserves.
Very true. This is Caroline.
And this is Mike. Thank you for listening to Book Club Meets Movie Night. If you wouldn't mind heading over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts, like Pocket Casts. That's very popular now. And rate, review, and subscribe. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review. If you do, and we hope you do, we will read it on the air. So please say nice things. If you say mean things, I will cry and feel bad about it and will not read it on the air. So there. Our final book of the year will be Culpability by Bruce Holsinger. It just came out in the summer of 2025. It is excellent. It is going to be a book club discussion only. There is no adaptation for it yet. But we wanted you guys to have a good conversation starter as you're going into your holidays and your long family dinners and mean mugging that mother-in-law who's judging you for being a bad parent. This book, go get it, and you can talk about it. Culpability by Bruce Holsinger. It'll be out. Our episode will be out probably, second week of December, so you're just in time for you guys to have it to discuss over the holidays.
Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.